Rockstar spent months telling you there would be a physical edition of GTA 6. Their CEO said it 3 separate times. He said it to Variety, to CNBC, to IGN. He called it not the plan to go digital only. He talked about how much the company values its retail partners. He used the phrase big physical component. He sounded totally confident. Then pre-orders went live on June 25th, and people opened the product page. Inside that physical box, the one you'd buy at a store, the one sitting on a shelf, the one that looks exactly like a game, there's no disc. There's a piece of paper with a download code on it. That's it. That's the whole thing. You're paying for a cardboard box, some sleeve art, and a code that does the same thing the digital version does for less money, except you also had to drive to a store to get it. The fallout started within hours, and it's still going. Here's what actually happened, why Rockstar made this call, and what it means for anyone who thought they were buying something they actually owned. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to understand the expectations that have been building for months. Back in February of 2026, a Polish gaming outlet called PPE reported that Rockstar was considering going fully digital at launch. No physical copies at all as a way to prevent leaks. GTA 6 had already had its development footage hacked and leaked. Its first trailer dropped early because someone got into the files. The studio was paranoid, and for decent reason. But Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick shut it down almost immediately. He told Variety, and his exact words were, "That's not the plan." He told IGN the same thing with even more detail, confirming that physical and digital would both launch on November 19th. By May, he was on CNBC talking about what he called a big physical component and how he had high esteem for retail partners. People took him at his word. Why wouldn't they? The CEO of the parent company said it multiple times on record. What nobody fully passed until the pre-order pages went live was that Zelnick never actually said the word disc. He said physical. He said retail presence. He said there would be boxes on shelves. And technically, all of that is true. There are boxes. They are on shelves. But the box contains a download code, not a game. Some people online called it misleading. One gaming industry figure, former Blizzard producer Mark Kern, posted that Zelnick had used what he described as weasel words, technically accurate statements that implied something different from what was actually being delivered. That's a reading you can fairly debate. But the reaction from fans suggested that whatever Zelnick meant, it wasn't what most people understood him to be saying. So why did Rockstar do it this way? A few reasons have been floated, and they're not all equally convincing. The most charitable explanation is the leak prevention angle. Physical discs get into the hands of retailers and distributors weeks before launch. Some of those copies end up on eBay. Some end up in the hands of people who post story spoilers, record gameplay, or reverse engineer content that the studio worked hard to keep secret. GTA 6 has been in development since roughly 2014 and had already been leaked multiple times. Rockstar didn't want the ending of one of the most anticipated games ever to show up on Reddit before anyone had a chance to actually play it. Preloading begins November 12th, which means the code still needs to reach buyers a week before launch. But a redemption code getting out early does a lot less damage than actual disk media being in circulation, because the code can potentially be tracked and deactivated. A pressed disk cannot. The second explanation is more straightforward and probably more financially honest. Disk manufacturing costs money, shipping costs money, returns cost money. When you sell someone a download code in a box, you've eliminated most of that overhead while still capturing the retail shelf presence that drives impulse purchases and consumer awareness. The box serves a marketing function. The disk was always the expensive part. And then there's the third reason. The one nobody at Rockstar or Take-Two is going to say in an earnings call, but which is probably the most significant of all: used game sales. When someone buys a disc, plays it, and trades it into GameStop, the store sells that disc used for slightly less than retail. That money goes to GameStop and the person who traded it in. Rockstar gets nothing. That transaction chain can repeat 5, 10, 20 times. Rockstar gets paid exactly once on the original sale, and every subsequent owner of that disc represents revenue the company never sees. A download code, once redeemed, is gone. It's tied to an account. It cannot be traded in. The secondary market for GTA 6 just stopped existing. That's a meaningful shift at the scale of GTA 6. This is a game that's going to sell tens of millions of copies. The used game market for something this popular at retail, over years of re-releases and bundles and holiday discounts, represents hundreds of millions of dollars. Rockstar just removed that from the equation. Every copy sold is a first sale. The response from collectors and physical media advocates has been sharp and specific. Video Games Plus, an independent North American retailer that's been in business for nearly 40 years, announced it would not be carrying GTA 6. Their statement was clear. Their company policy is that they do not carry products that contain only a digital download code. They said they'd reconsider if Rockstar ever released a true disc version. But for now, they're out. Lootbox Gaming, a Delaware-based physical media retailer, said much the same thing. The concern they named, the one that keeps coming up across these retailer statements, is game preservation. When you own a disc, you own a disc. You can install it on a console with no internet connection. You can lend it to a friend. You can sell it. You can play it 20 years from now if the hardware still works. When you own a download code and then the servers go away, which they eventually always do, you own nothing. Your game is gone. Collectors who have spent years building physical libraries with resale and trade value are looking at a product that provides the aesthetic of physical ownership with none of the substance. If you want to stay up with how this all develops before November, and there are going to be more developments, subscribe. We cover everything that matters in the GTA 6 space as it breaks. Now, not everyone is treating this as catastrophe. Several prominent voices in gaming pushed back on the retailer boycotts, pointing out that the retailers refusing to carry GTA 6 are declining one of the best-selling games in history on principle, and that this will cost them significantly more than it costs Rockstar. One person on X summed up the unsympathetic reaction with something along the lines of, "Your whole identity is being a CD store," which is blunt but reflects a real division in how people are thinking about this. And the sales data backs that up. Despite the controversy, both the physical and digital editions of GTA 6 are currently top sellers. The Ultimate Edition is outselling the Standard Edition. People are angry, but they're also pre-ordering. This is one of the most anticipated entertainment products in history, and for the majority of buyers, the disc situation is an inconvenience at most. There's also a rumor circulating, sourced again from PPE and the same insider they've used before, that a traditional disc version could still arrive in December 2026, about a month after launch. Rockstar hasn't confirmed this. Take-Two hasn't commented on it. But if the goal was always to prevent pre-launch leaks and then release a proper physical edition once the story was no longer spoilable, this would make that strategy explicit. It would also explain why some of the CEO's earlier statements were carefully worded around what would exist at launch rather than what would exist overall. What this whole situation actually represents is a collision between two things that have been on a slow collision course for about a decade. The gaming industry has been pushing toward full digital ownership for years. The elimination of used game markets, the erosion of disc-based preservation, the shift toward licenses rather than purchases. Most of the time that shift happens quietly, through platform policies and digital storefronts and subscription services that feel convenient enough that people don't interrogate what they're actually agreeing to. GTA 6 happened to be big enough that the shift became impossible to ignore. When the most anticipated game in a generation ships its physical edition without a disc, it forces a conversation that was always going to happen eventually. What does it mean to buy a game? Do you own it or license it? And when the servers eventually go dark, what do you have left? Rockstar isn't the first publisher to use Code in Box for a physical release. Nintendo has done it. EA has done it. It's a practice that's been slowly normalized for years on smaller releases, where nobody noticed enough to care. They're just the first to do it at this scale, with this many people watching on a game with this much cultural weight behind it. The preloading date is November 12th. Launch is November 19th, exclusively on PS5 and Xbox Series X. No PC release date has been announced, which is its own ongoing conversation. Whether a disc version arrives in December, whether Rockstar addresses the backlash formally, whether any of the boycotting retailers eventually cave, all of that is still unresolved. What isn't unresolved is what happened. You were told there would be a physical edition. There is a physical edition. It just doesn't contain the thing you probably pictured when someone said the words physical edition. Whether that's a lie, a technicality, or just the future arriving faster than anyone wanted it to, is probably the question worth sitting with. What do you think? Let us know in the comments if you're still buying the physical version, or if this was the thing that finally pushed you to go fully digital.